right, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited for the second part of this series on data virtualization. Today we're going to be going into more of a deep dive into the product itself, into Denodo. So on Tuesday, we saw kind of a use case with Prologis, and they walked through Denodo's integration into their overall architecture and how they generally go through the process of building analytics and their whole governance process around that and how Denodo helps with that. So today we have two people from Denodo who are going to be talking about the product a little bit more and generally about data virtualization as well. So a couple housekeeping items before we actually get started. We're going to spend about 5 minutes with introductions, and then we're going to jump into the presentation. And then we've left 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions as the presentation is happening, feel free to just throw them in the Q&A section. You'll see there's a chat and a Q&A. Be sure to use the Q&A, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the session. And then finally, we'll close out at the end and give you information on how to access this recording. So overall, the vendor series with Women in Analytics is a free virtual series. We feature leading analytics products and solution companies. This series is delivered in 2 parts, as I mentioned. So we have the first part that happened on Tuesday, which is a use case, and then more of a technical deep dive into the product or solution in the second part. All of our events are free and accessible online and open to everyone to attend. And we do ask that all participants abide by our code of conduct. A little bit about Women in Analytics. Our whole mission is to increase the visibility of women making an impact in the analytics space. And so we provide a platform for women to lead conversations around the advancements of analytical research, development, and applications. We did recently launch a new membership platform, so feel free to check that out at womeninaanalytics.com. And I'll talk about this a little bit more at the end. We have a virtual summit coming up in February as well, so stick around for more information on that. I do want to thank Denodo, who is the sponsor for this webinar series. So thank you to Denodo. Again, we'll learn much more about the company in a little bit. And just some webinar tips: if you are having audio issues, feel free to use the chat or email us. If you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to insert those questions into the Q&A and we will get to those at the end. All right, now to introduce our 2 speakers that we have today. We have Nishtha Chauhan, who is part of Denodo's product marketing team. And as a part of her role, she drives customer retention and advocacy and helps the sales team drive new business growth. Nishtha brings global leadership experience in product and marketing roles with a wide range of industry knowledge in data integration, data management, and the analytics space. She is passionate about driving social impact initiatives using technology for social good. Welcome, Nishtha, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Secondly, we have Emma Stein. She is a sales engineer at Denodo and has experience helping customers and prospects across various industries implement and understand data virtualization use cases. Thank you, Emma, for being here with us today. And I'm sure everyone is super excited to get started. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand things off to the both of you. Again, if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A and we will get to those towards the end.
Okay. First of all, Reagan, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. We are very excited to be part of this webinar series and present about Denodo use case and technical deep dive. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone in the audience for joining us today. So today, and thanks for the introduction. So today, I just wanted to give you a sense of what we'll be covering in this session. We'll give a brief, I'll just go over an overview of the Denodo as a company and our initiative and contribution in the data community, and then talking about our technology, data virtualization. Then I'll cover, since the topic we have is about how we have used our technology to come up with help community to come up with solutions using our coronavirus data portal. That's what I'll give an overview and some of the use case examples, followed by the demo on our platform, which Emma would take from here and continue from there. So I wanted to start with like what's our contribution to the data community. It's COVID-19 Data Portal Project. Before that, just a brief overview of our company. We have been in the data business for about 20 years and have been leader in the data integration Magic Quadrant. So we have been doing data virtualization for about 20 years. The company was started in Spain, but we have headquarters now in Palo Alto. We have about 800 plus customers across different industries, and we have seen massive growth because the virtualization technology is picking up in the data integration space. So as a company, we wanted to, we have a strong culture in corporate social responsibility, and our CEO is a strong advocate of how our, he advocates how our employees should be volunteering time to help nonprofits, and especially when we were hit with the COVID-19 crisis. So what we started at that time, we started giving away our software for unlimited access and licenses to our customers and partners who were using the technology to come up with solutions or finding out insights into COVID-19 scenarios. Like either it could be, we have a lot of healthcare and pharma customers. So that's one way we started contributing. And we had, we also had, like, as I mentioned, employees volunteering in the community to help organizations that were dealing with the effects of COVID-19. Then we also thought about what is we were engineers, and it's a brainchild of our CEO that we thought about how we can contribute by using our own technology, by doing what we do best in the integration space and the virtualization space, what we can do best. So that's where we decided to work on a project, which is to connect, create a data portal, which was connecting all the different, there were so many different data sources available for analysts, data scientists to use and to come up with research and find out insights to deal with the pandemic situation. So that's where we decided in building a coronavirus data portal. So moving on to the next slide, where so the objective was to create a unique collaborative platform where we can manage the data sets, we can come up with analyze the data sets and publish those data sets for everyone to use for free. And that's where you can, anyone can, it's a free portal. We wanted to make it as a collaborative initiative where people across the globe, across the world can upload the data sets they have, or they can use what we have data sets that we have integrated to explore it and do their research, combine it with their own data sets, and then consume it in a very user-friendly way. So that was the objective. So as you can see, the object here, it's a lot of integration work that is involved and involving a lot of data sets that are very complex, available by various different departments. So moving on to what is Denodo, how Denodo was uniquely positioned to create such portal which can be used by researchers, analysts, and organizations all over the world. So the challenges there, like as I mentioned, there are very different sources, very different formats that are available, and they are not in the format that can be easily consumable. So yes, data scientists they will have to spend time to analyze it and to make it in a way that they can use it. So a lot of times they would have to spend time and to make it more usable. And there are data sources that are available from different departments. It could be government, it could be different individual like socioeconomic departments and that provide data sets. So there were tons of data that's available. And there is a challenge that how do you combine and use it? So that's where what is the need, what's the requirement, like how you can ensure that what do you need there to make sure that there is a collaborative platform. So the need was to create a single access point to all data at any location, and to expose it in a more user-friendly, so that even any user analyst can use it. They don't have to spend time at making it more usable for their format they are comfortable with. And they wanted also, since it involved a lot of integration, instead of moving data from one place to another, we wanted to make sure that yes, data can be integrated in a much quicker and faster way. That was the need. And then coming up with more, the data that we are making available should be more trusted, have a lot of data quality already taken care of it, like the business rules and quality checks are already done. And we also wanted to make sure that the need is, it should be discoverable. It should be, we put a marketplace out there and it should be available for anyone to use it the way they want, rather than we pushing out in the way that should be made available. And then in the last, coming up with more suggestions on how that can be improved. So I just covered right now, like what was our intention with the CDP and what are the challenges for anyone to bring up a platform like that, and what is the need for a modern approach to integrate that. Now, this is where Denodo is uniquely positioned as a technology. As you see in the red, this is where the Denodo sits. It sits between the data sources, all kind of data sources, and creates a semantic layer for any sort of application, any sort of way that is made available to the end user. So Denodo, so our ultimate, if I have to just cover like what we do is we connect with different data sources. It could be unstructured, structured data sets. It could be cloud sources, on-premises, or streaming data, or it could be in any format available. So Denodo connects it. We are not integrating, we are not like moving the data, but we are just connecting to those data sets and creating a virtual view of those data sets, so that there is combining on those and then creating adding rules to it, so that those data sets are combined in a way that is made available in a universal semantic layer to all the applications, to all the users in different formats. It could be made available, as I mentioned, in more discoverable format through our data catalog. It could be made available through different tools where data scientists that they are comfortable with to do queries, or any sort of BI tool like Tableau or Power BI. They can use it in that format. And the other way is it's also available in API format and through either RESTful APIs, GraphQL, or GeoJSON formats that can be exposed to the end user applications. So that's where that resolves the challenges of like how it makes sure that we are connecting in the COVID data portal initiative that we created was like unleashing data access to all the data sources that are available around the world to make easier for researchers to come up with the data insights. So what exactly is Denodo Coronavirus Data Portal? It allows you to search for the data sets that are curated by our own data engineers, data scientists, and it is made available for end users to search and explore. And then on top of it, we have like a dashboard which is integrated with the data portal which gives you different views that can be used. And you can combine that with your own data sets that you have. Either you can download those data sets and combine it privately on your own instance, or you can make it available, or you can just add your data sources to the data portal itself and then combine it right there in the data portal. So that's one way to do it, and that's how a lot of partners and our clients have been using data portal. They have been not only using our data that we are providing, but also contributing back to the data portal. So that way, it's a collaborative effort, and it allows organizations to it makes it more richer. That makes the data portal more richer. And you can also download it, like as I mentioned, and the way you contribute is by providing your own data sets. The other way, as I said, it's an open data portal. It's free to use, free access available for anyone who wants it to access it and to do their own research. And not only that, there are a lot of other data portals available out there, and they might be very specific to maybe healthcare data and all that, but we are connecting to all kind of data that could be social, demographic, economic, air pollution. So to give you a little example, so when we created this data, or we were working on this data portal, we were asked by French government if we can there were researchers who were identifying if there is a connection between the COVID cases and the urban cities where the air pollution is more. Was there a connection? They were doing this kind of research, and they asked us if we provide the data set that can help with their research. So what we really did was we took the data from the meteorological department about the air pollution in different regions, different urban cities, and then combined that to identify, to make that available in a more curated way to the researchers so that they can then combine with their data sets and identify if, yes, there was a connection related to the COVID cases related to the urban cities and the air pollution out there. So that's one example. And we have a dedicated data stewards who are tagging this data, categorizing the data across different data sets that we are connecting to make sure that the data sets are curated and are made available ready to be used by data scientists and researchers. So right now, the CDP is available it's running on AWS Cloud. So you can search and browse using the Denodo data catalog, and you can connect BI tools and create your own visualizations. You can also download it. You can access the data through web service APIs, and there is, if you don't want to use it on the cloud, you can also download the fully functional sandbox to your own server and just run your analysis from there. So we are making sure that with this initiative, that in whatever way we can make it available, which is easier for researchers and data community to use the data sets in a more easier way to come up with insights that can help all of us fight the COVID impact. So these are some of the data sources that we have connected to. As you can see, there is Air Quality Open Data Platform, Australian Statistics Labor Force Survey, and we are also connecting to Public Health in England and San Francisco Public Health. So there are tons of data about more than, it keeps on increasing as we get the demand and requirement from our users. But right now, I would say it's about more than around 64 plus sources that we have connected to. So to go over a little bit on this is how the architecture looks like. As you can see, these are the different sources. Now, Johns Hopkins is one of the sources that are available. The university releases data on a very regular basis, and it's one of the very popular ones for the researchers. So we connect to that as well. And there's World Bank, data from Google, and all these data sources we have checked for the licenses, and these are sources that are made available. We use this data portal, our technology, to connect to these sources and and make it available and expose it through data catalog, or as I said, different formats that are available, JDBC, ODBC, through APIs and GeoJSON to make it available to the end users, and which they can access it in a way, in any format that they are comfortable with, or the tool that they are using it. So we have a sandbox, fully functional sandbox available to download, or also it is available on cloud to be used. So I wanted to go over a little bit on some of the examples of how customers and partners have used Denodo's technology, either through data portal or if they already had the technology, to come up with very interesting use cases to fight the COVID impact. So one of the university we have, I mean, actually not only one, we have different universities, without naming them. One of them in Australia, they are, when we were hit by this pandemic situation, all the universities around the globe had to move to online learning. And they were able, using Denodo, they were able to integrate 30 plus complex applications within 2 weeks to bring up their online learning platform. And that was pretty, was pretty impressive in the sense that they could bring up without disrupting their learning year, like without disrupting the year for the students. They could come up with their online platform and they could make it available for the students. And the data from the Denodo also helped them analyze the engagement of students and staff with those online learning platforms. And not only that, they were very, using Denodo platform, they were able to do real-time contact tracing for students and staff during the COVID-19 times. And they are still, and this is something, a very remarkable achievement for them as a university to come up with a solution that quick and to make sure that their staff and students are safe. And this trend we have seen at many different universities, even in North America and across the globe, that they have using Denodo technology for the digital transformation to come up with the solution as fast as 2 weeks. We have another leading healthcare provider that they have hospitals across North America. So they have created dashboard for healthcare, coronavirus dashboard using Tableau, which summarizes the patient counts, the outcomes, and their stay across different counties and states and countrywide. So that's where the data sets that we provide are very useful for them to connect to and combine it with their own data sets to come up with like region, county-wise, state-wise, and different across different hospitals, the patient counts and their stay and etc. And this is where they use this dashboard to monitor like how many beds are available and how many percentage of the test came positive, as well as like how to ensure that the supply of their equipment is all aligned with the demand. The other way we've seen, so this was not only the data portal as well as the that we have made available is not only of interest to healthcare customers, but also to a lot of businesses who now are thinking about how to reopen their offices. So what they are trying to understand, the managers are trying to combine the data sets that are available through data portal, which mentions which county has more number of cases, or which they combine that data with employee survey data that employee provides to figure out if it's safe for these employees to bring to the offices, which offices to open, and which employees they should allow to come back to work, and who should work remotely. So that way they can reduce the risk of, they can keep their employees and staff safe. So that's one of the ways that that a lot of businesses, other than healthcare and pharma, are using to figure out how to use the coronavirus data portal. So I also wanted to just mention, I know we talked about data virtualization as a technology. This is very uniquely positioned than the traditional technology of ETL. So one of our customers, which is not listed here, they mentioned that they were able to combine this data from the employee data with the data available from COVID portal using virtualization technology in just like 30 days, just because they didn't have to worry about moving the data from the traditional ETL format. They don't have to move the data. They just have to create, using virtualization technology, they can just create a virtual view and then analyze from that semantic layer. So there's a huge advantage than the traditional ETL format here, using the Denodo's technology to make sure that you can get up and running faster with your dashboards and analysis. So with that, I would pass it on to Emma to show you a demo of our data catalog from the COVID data portal and some of the other interesting use cases. Over to you, Emma.
Okay. So you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep, looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, so my goal is to show you a demo of Denodo using the data sets that Nishtha was just talking about as my example. So I'm going to use the COVID data portal in order to kind of show off our technology. So you can see my agenda here today. So I'm going to start by using the data catalog to search through the curated data sets that we've exposed via the COVID data portal. Once I find some data sets that look interesting to me, then I'm going to show how I can connect to the data portal using my BI tool of choice. So this could be really any tool that you use in your environment, but just for sake of example, I'll use Tableau. Then I'm going to kind of switch from that end user perspective to a developer perspective and show how I can extend the contents of the data portal using my own local Denodo server and how a Denodo developer can integrate data from multiple different sources to create this single access layer. And then at the end, we'll talk about how you can access the data portal, how you can contribute, and we'll leave a little time for question and answer as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump right over to the Denodo data catalog. Just refresh the page here. And so you can see here, I've already pre-filled in my credentials. I'll show you how you can get access to this later, but I'm just going to agree to the terms and conditions and I'm going to sign in. So once I sign in, you'll see a couple different things. First, at the top, I'll see this search bar. Here I can search for any relevant data sets. It's just a keyword-based search. And Denodo will return any view that has my search term somewhere in the metadata. So whether that's in a field name, a view description, a field description, etc., any of those will be returned. I can also see at the bottom some popular data sets that might be interesting for me to explore, as well as links to various different types of sources. So for example, I can see some of the sources that are available in the COVID data portal. You saw a similar list in a slide just a couple of minutes ago. So you can see, for example, San Francisco Department of Public Health, Johns Hopkins should be here somewhere, right here, the Ministry of Health from several different countries, etc. All right, so let's say I'm looking for information on insurance because I want to know how insurance coverage affects the death rates or something like that. I can type in insurance here and I can see I have a couple different data sets that are returned to me that I can go and explore the data. I'll also show you at this point in the data catalog, I can click on browse, go to databases and folders, and I can see various data sets. So these are a wide range of data sets ranging from demographic information, government measures like school closures, as well as lockdown information, more concrete data like the number of cases, the number of deaths, etc. So let's see what it looks like when we actually click on a data set. So for example, let's start with something simple. I'm just going to look for COVID case rates by county. I'm particularly interested in United States data. I'll also point out I have the ability to search by more business language. So Nishtha mentioned that we have data stewards tagging and categorizing our data. I have the ability to search by those tags as well. But here I can see my views that have county somewhere in the metadata. So for example, maybe this Johns Hopkins information looks interesting to me. So I can click on it. And I'm immediately brought to this summary page where I can see various pieces of information. So I can see a description of the view. I can see that the data contained here is daily case reports from Johns Hopkins University, containing information on confirmed cases, recovered, death cases, etc., and that it's updated daily. If I scroll down, I can see all my different fields. I can see that there's a field called active, which is the number of active cases. I think that's going to be interesting to me. I can also see several other things in the data catalog. For example, I can see usage information, information like common queries that were executed, the average number of results returned, or the average execution time. And I can also go over to my query tab. And the idea with this query tab, it's an easy to use drag and drop UI that will be easy for your business users to use. And here I can run some example queries, get previews of my data, make sure I have the access that I need, etc. So for example, if I just copy over all the fields, I think I'll add a couple filters here. So for example, I'm going to set the country to the United States because I'm just going to be looking at United States data for now. And then maybe I'll add a second filter that I want data from yesterday. Today's data won't be reported yet. So save that. And then I can run my query and momentarily I should get my results back. So again, the idea with this data catalog, whether you're searching through COVID data or you're searching through your own corporate Denodo server data catalog, the idea is it's this marketplace where users can go, they can search through and understand the views that have been exposed from the virtual layer before they go and visualize it. So it's kind of an intermediary for your end users between that virtual layer and their visualization or query tools in order to provide them with some kind of self-service. And here I can see my results. So for example, for the county of Baldwin in Alabama, I can see 11,000 active cases were reported yesterday. From here, once I kind of go and I understand the data and I find data that's interesting to me, I have the opportunity to go visualize it. So you saw in the architecture diagram before, which I can just go back to here quickly, several different ways of accessing data that has been exposed to the virtualization layer. So starting over here on the left, we've already looked at the data through the data catalog. Data is also available to be queried via SQL, whether that's from your reporting tool of choice. You can see Tableau, Power BI, Business Objects represented here, but many others can connect to Denodo as well. Or maybe that's a data science notebook, something like Jupyter or Apache Zeppelin or R, etc. And also data can be queried as a service. So let me just go back to my data catalog for a second. If I click on this plug icon within the data catalog, I can see several of the different ways to connect to my data. So for example, I can copy my JDBC connection string, paste it into my tool of choice and query my data. And you can see similar things for an ODBC connection, a REST API, or an OData service. So you can see the way of consuming the data is quite flexible. So I could copy this and paste it into my tool. Right now, I see that I have this Tableau button. If I click on this, it's going to download a Tableau workbook, which is going to connect directly to this view. So I'm going to click on that, and momentarily it should open. And I just need to sign in using my credentials. I can see what the connection to Denodo looks like from a business intelligence perspective. So if I go over here to the data source tab, because I downloaded this from the data catalog, the details are already pre-populated for me to connect to my Denodo server. But you can see Tableau has a built-in connector to Denodo, and you just need to fill in a couple of different details, and then you'll be able to see all of the views that your particular user has been given access to. So users will only be able to see the views that you've specifically given them access to. And then from here to the user, Denodo is just going to look like a single relational database. So even though we know that this data is coming from many different sources, many different API connections, and other types of data connections, from an end user perspective, they can define joins between these views, aggregations, etc. And a single query will be sent from Tableau to Denodo, and all of the federation will be handled by Denodo. So all of that is abstracted to the user. The other important point that I'll just mention, but we won't really have time to get into today, is that there's a whole optimization component behind this as well. So when a query is received by Denodo, Denodo looks at various different factors, things like statistics about the data, data volumes, metadata like primary keys and indexes in order to try and determine the best execution plan. And based on all of those different pieces of information, it tries to dynamically optimize the query before going to retrieve the data. So from here, your user can create any kind of dashboard or report that they want, just like they would with any other data source. So for example, I can drag in the country. I can drag in the number of deaths, for example, and I can create a map displaying that information. Probably want to add some filters about the report date, but I think you get the idea. Obviously, we all know the United States, unfortunately, has had a lot of deaths, so we can see some metrics regarding that. Okay, so we don't have too much time left, but I kind of want to switch now from that end user perspective back to the developer perspective. So you can kind of go behind the scenes of what the process of creating the connections to these data sources looks like and how easily the Denodo tools can be used not only to connect to the data sources, but create transformed and integrated virtual views with your data. So if I just quickly go back to my slides, where are my slides? There we go. Zoom bar out of the way. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to connect to my local Denodo server. So I'm calling it my corporate Denodo server, but this is a Denodo server I have installed on my laptop. And I'm going to connect from that local Denodo server to the Denodo COVID data portal. And to this Denodo server, it's just going to look like any other JDBC connection. So we're just connecting with a JDBC driver to Denodo. And it's going to look from the perspective of this Denodo server like we're connecting to any other relational database like Oracle, SQL Server, etc. We know that behind the scenes, this Denodo server is connecting to all of those various data sources that I just showed were exposed via the COVID data portal. So we're going to take that data that's exposed via the COVID data portal, we're going to query it, and we're also going to connect to some other data sources that are located in our corporate environment. So I believe this is going to be Oracle and also an API connection. So just to set up the example a little bit, let's say we're a retail company and we have stores throughout the United States. And we want to do some analysis on how COVID rates are going to affect our stores. So for example, maybe once COVID rates in certain counties reach a threshold, we're going to close that store. So we want to create a virtual view that's going to return the percentage of cases in each county where we have a store. So in order to do that, we're going to combine data from the three sources that you see represented here. So from the COVID data portal, we're going to get the information on US cases by county. We want to adjust those cases based on population. So in order to do that, I can also connect to some US Census data, which is available via an API call. And then I want to join that with my store information located in my Oracle data warehouse in order to only get the data from the locations where I actually have stores and to understand the impact that's going to have on my stores. So we can create an example view that connects to these three data sources, joins the data together, and then performs some kind of aggregation. So I'm going to open up my Design Studio. And again, the Design Studio is our main developer tool, and it's what your developers would use to connect to their sources and create these virtual views. I don't have too much time to explore this, but you can see on the left what I have here is what I call a virtual database. And the virtual database can be thought of as like a project level or a business case level organizational method. So within here, I can see I have my different data source connections. So for example, I have the connection to my Oracle data source as well as to the COVID data portal. If I want to create a new data source connection, I just go here. It's all done through graphical wizards. I just go to new data source and I select the type of adapter. So for example, if I'm creating a JDBC connection, I would just click this. You can see I'm brought to a fairly standard connection wizard where I choose my adapter. And then I just continue on from there, filling in my various information. So for example, if I open the connection to the COVID data portal, you can see I have my information here. And then from there, I have access to introspect my source and create virtual views over the tables in the underlying sources. Again, as a reminder, what I'm doing is just creating metadata representations over the data in my underlying sources. So in a moment, this will load the various tables that I have. And all I need to do in order to incorporate one of these tables into my virtual schema is just check the box next to it and press create selected. And that Denodo is then going to go to that source and gather the various metadata. Every time I execute this view, Denodo is going to go to that source and get real-time data. So you can see here I have my three source connections defined, a connection to an API, and then a connection to Oracle, as well as the COVID data portal. And then I've created my various base view objects, which again are representations of the data in the underlying sources. So I have all of my different objects that I need to create my integrated view here. To combine the data, I can then proceed as if all of my data is located in a single relational database, even though we know that the data is actually in the original sources. So to do that, I just use relational operations. So again, I would go to new, I would select the type of operation I want to apply. So for example, a join. And then I just drag in my various tables that I want to join together. So for example, my Johns Hopkins data coming from the COVID data portal, and then the data on my stores, I can join them together and then just drag and drop my join conditions. So for example, I'm going to join based on the county here. So I'll just show you what kind of my final view looked like for sake of time. Yeah, this is the one I wanted. So here I've dragged in my 3 tables, again, the COVID data portal information, the API connection, and then my internal store information. I've set the join conditions. I can set some filters, some aggregations. In my output tab, I can rename fields, rename my view. I can also add new calculated fields. So for example, I wanted to adjust those active cases based on population data. So here you can see I'm doing some calculations to divide the number of active cases by the population of that county, as well as doing some aggregation so I can understand the number of stores that are in that county, for example. And then from here, you can see it was quite easy to create these integrated views. I can then execute my views and I can get my data back. So kind of in summary, we hope that you're taking away a couple different points from this. One is kind of the ease of use of connecting to a large variety of different sources, whether those be relational sources, API connections, files, etc. It should be quite easy to connect to those sources and then integrate that. Then from there, you can use the data catalog as your kind of marketplace to search through your data. And then of course, our flexible consumption options. Okay, so in a moment, we're gonna open it up for Q&A, but just a quick note. We have this coronavirus data portal page on our website that you guys can go to. It has quick links that you can go to the data catalog yourself, kind of explore the data and walk through the same process that I did. So feel free to go to our website and go access and explore similar to what I just did. And now I think we're ready for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. That was great. I appreciate you diving into the tool like that. And I think this is such an excellent use case too for people to kind of get familiarized with this concept while also seeing some other data sets out there, because I know it is in high demand to find relevant COVID data sets. So I appreciate you both walking through that use case. I definitely have questions. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions either from the audience, feel free to submit those in the Q&A section. So my first question, there's sometimes a confusion when I talk to people about data virtualization before, that it gets a little bit conflated with like a data catalog. And I know Denodo has aspects of data catalogs, but could either of you explain the differences between those two types of tools and where they may have some commonality as well?
Yeah, sure. So a data catalog obviously is typically giving you more business information about what data exists, what it means, where you can find it, etc. So in that case, there is some overlap. In our case, our data catalog is only going to expose the information of the data that's actually available in Denodo. So sometimes that's a little bit different than a completely enterprise-wide data catalog, depending on how you've implemented Denodo. What we're really adding here is the ability to very easily actually connect to those data sets and combine and integrate them by creating these virtual views. And kind of the core of our product, which we didn't really get into today, is the ability to dynamically optimize queries as they come in using the various metadata information that you define in the virtual layer.
Yeah, that's an excellent differentiator there. Thank you for going into that, because I think they're often, the two concepts get a little conflated if you're not super into the weeds in either one of them. So speaking of which, I wanted to add a follow-up question to that. So how much overhead does Denodo really add if you are transferring data in real time every time a query is executed?
Right. So kind of everyone's first question usually when you introduce this concept is there going to be overhead? How is this going to perform, etc. And it's kind of a big topic to go into. But just to describe kind of the goal of our optimizer and how we deal with queries when they come in, our optimizer tries to rewrite queries so that it can push down as much as possible to the data sources. And that's for two reasons. One, we know that data sources, things like data warehouses and other query engines have a lot of value and that they can process data very quickly. So we want to use the processing power of those systems. In addition, we know that data transfer takes a long time. So we want to reduce the amount of data that has to always be transferred. So we kind of, in order to prevent overhead, we kind of have this smart optimizer, which tries to reduce the amount of data and work that actually has to be done in the virtualization layer to ensure that queries are executed quickly.
Yeah, and just to add to that, thanks, Emma. So we, like, for example, there was a scenario where I was explaining how Johns Hopkins data is used a lot from the CDB portal. So like, we also cache that data in the virtual layer rather than like every time we're hitting on to the Johns Hopkins data source to get the data. So that way it makes it a little bit faster as well. So data that is frequently used can be cached in the layer.
Yeah, so caching is an option that's also available. So typically we do real-time data access, but if you have a case where it's not realistic to access a data source in real time, or you notice that a data set is a real bottleneck in your query, then you can configure another third-party database and schedule loads of that data as a cache.
Yep, that's really helpful. And I assume you provide some sort of mechanism to help the user understand what their overhead is going to be, or maybe options to kind of tweak some of those configurations to maybe push the load in one place versus another.
Right, yeah, so lots of different configuration options, and every time you execute a query, we didn't really get into it, but that Design Studio has a lot of features to actually see what happens when you executed a query. So there's a very detailed execution plan and trace to see which part took the bulk of the time, how long the transfer took, as well as the optimizations.
Yeah, I was going to mention one of the big things, especially because, Denodo, as you mentioned, or you showed in one of your slides, it connects to a bunch of different types of data sources, including on-prem sources and cloud sources. And so one of the big barriers I've seen for a lot of big companies is this concept of understanding what the cost and overhead is going to be for moving to the cloud and trying to wrap their heads around that migration. So if you had specific conversations with companies who are trying to migrate to the cloud to potentially provide more opportunities for them, and what kinds of benefits does Denodo bring to that transition process?
Yeah, so definitely like a growing use case for us, as like pretty much every company right now is like considering like, should we move to the cloud? How do we move to the cloud? Where they're in the midst of that transition. So because Denodo acts as an abstraction layer, if you have Denodo between your end users and your sources, while you are doing that migration to the cloud, Denodo can completely abstract that process in that your users are always connecting through Denodo. And while some of your data is on-prem and some is through the cloud, they have this single point of access to connect to the data.
Yeah, and as a use case, like as Emma mentioned, cloud transformation or cloud migration is one of the most popular use cases. So Prologis presented on Tuesday. So for them, that was one of the major use cases other than the data science, where they had the abstract layer and which allowed to do the cloud transformation without business users or end users knowing it. And their CEO was pretty surprised when when they finally migrated, because they didn't even get to know that this was all going on under the abstraction layer of Denodo.
That's awesome. I want to ask another question about kind of those downstream applications from Denodo. So Emma, you showed us an example with Tableau, which is a data visualization tool. Are there other kind of consumers downstream from Denodo other than like data visualization tools?
Yeah, lots of options. So for example, another popular use case is kind of like a data science-based use case, where data scientists can use Denodo to kind of accelerate the process of their data preparation and data access. And then they can query, instead of ingesting all of their data into a single data store, they can configure the connections from Denodo, and then they can connect from their data science notebooks or their Python code or their R code, or however they typically query their data.
And I think another aspect of that too is that done via like API, or what are the different API capabilities with Denodo?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So far we mostly talked about querying Denodo via SQL, but also any of those virtual views are also able to be exposed via APIs in various different formats. So you can expose REST APIs. We have a GraphQL service, OData service, as well as SOAP services as well. So it's quite flexible. And one of the advantages is that you create these consistent data models in your virtual layer with a unified security across them so that that applies to all of the different methods of access.
Yeah, I was about to ask too the differences between doing this type of work, this logic downstream versus in Denodo. I assume that it increases reusability of those of that logic. So could you talk about some of the benefits of moving that type of logic into the virtualization layer as opposed to within your notebook or within your data visualization tool?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So reusability, definitely a huge factor. Also, yeah. So you're not defining one metric in Tableau and another one in Power BI, and your data sets aren't quite consistent. So that's one aspect. Another is, again, that optimization capability. Like, we understand that some tools have simple federation capabilities, for example, to connect to different data sources using your BI tool. Kind of, again, that core difference comes back to the optimizer and the ability to try and push down as much as possible to the data sources.
And you mentioned, you briefly touched on security too. Can you talk about what the security architecture looks like across Denodo?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, we're coming back to that single access layer. Because it's a single access layer, it can also act as kind of this unified security layer. And so the first thing is that users are only going to be able to see what specific views that you give them access to. So the most basic capability is giving them access at the view level. But we also have the ability to define these more fine-grained security restrictions, things like data masking, row and column level security. And we can also, of course, integrate with your LDAP, Active Directory, an existing security system, as well as configure single sign-on with your OAuth, SAML, OpenID, etc. providers.
And yes,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just adding, like, because we connect, we have a single layer. A lot of customers are using it as a single layer to make sure that who gets access to what kind of data, which is a huge requirement from them, like, so that they can control from one central layer, Denodo layer, about the access levels as well.
Yeah, I assume access to just the metadata is probably really nice to give people enough information on whether or not they need to ask for access to actually execute against a certain query.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can give them metadata access so that they can search through the data catalog, but not necessarily see all of the data.
Yep, that makes sense. And just kind of as a closing question, I'm wondering like what typical personas you see as like power users of this tool, or potentially what collaboration points between different departments do you usually see start to blossom after someone adopts Denodo or data virtualization tool?
Yeah, so typically you would have a lot of different ways that you could configure it, but typically you would have kind of like a Denodo developer or an administrator who are in charge of those different connections. And then they would make those views available to your different users. And the type of views that you're making available depends on the type of user that's querying, right? So you mentioned power users. So they might have the capability to kind of write their own SQL queries, do their own combinations. They don't need as curated views. So you might give them more of those base views that I mentioned that are more direct representations of what's in the underlying sources. Your power users and your data scientists might be more interested in that. Then you would have kind of more of like an application level view or a business level view where you'd really pre-join all of those views so that your users that are less technical and just want to connect right to those curated data sets can do that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Do you typically see like IT organizations owning Denodo and like because they are kind of the administrators of the tool, or what does that usually look like?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, usually the IT organization owns Denodo, but there's also some kind of interesting use cases with data scientists and them using the tool directly in order to more quickly prepare their data sets and connect to those different data sources. As we know, they typically spend a lot of time in that data exploration phase.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I know we've got only a couple of minutes left here. So I want to thank both of you for preparing all of this stuff and giving us an inside look into this new data and this new portal for COVID-19 that you have all put together. I think it's tremendous that you did that or are making that available to anybody to go in and take a look at the data. So thank you again for joining us today and for preparing for this webinar.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and presenting.
Awesome. And real quick before we conclude, we do have a virtual summit coming up in February on the 10th and 11th. It is virtual, so you can attend it from anywhere. It'll be 2 days, 2 tracks. We're going to focus on analytics culture. So there's going to be 2 different tracks that are going to be on ethics and data empowerment. We will have tutorials in here as well that are included in the price of the ticket. So if you are interested in joining us in February, feel free to go to our website at womeninanalytics.com and take a look at all the details about the upcoming virtual summit. And with that, I want to thank everybody for coming today, and we'll give you the recording to this session once we post it on our YouTube channel in a follow-up email, and feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues as well. Thank you to both of you again, and we hope to see you in February with the virtual summit.
Thank you.